Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of forks. In this video we're going to try to apply the knowledge we have gathered in the first part and try to solve 9 puzzles in a row. The puzzles are sorted in the ascending order of difficulty and all the puzzles are consisting of the concept of forks, or you may have to find some kind of combination which again consists of forks. So let us begin. Let us look at the first puzzle of the day. Here black is up by one pawn and it is white to move. So we can see that this a4 pawn is undefended and we can just equalize the material by playing queen takes a4. But the question is it the best move for white here or is there anything else? So you can just pause the video right now and try to think of a better move for white. Well, the best move is obviously the knight on e5 is undefended. So white can just take the advantage by playing queen to d8, check, forking the king and the knight. So king to h7 and we can just take a whole piece. Let us look at the next puzzle. Well, the material is equal here both for white and black and it is white to move. So you can just pause the video right now. There is nothing much to tell. So you can just pause the video right now and try to find out the best move for white. The move is knight takes g6 check, forking the king and the rook on f8. The pawn on h7 cannot capture the knight. Why? Because it is pinned by the queen. It cannot capture the knight, so king has to move, king to g8 and we can just take the rook on f8. So we are in an overall +3 advantage as white. Let us look at the next puzzle. Here it is white to move. White is actually is lagging in material. Black is up by one rook for a white bishop. So black is here in a +2 advantage, but it is white to move and white can turn the table. So you can just pause the video right now and try to think of the best move for white here. The move is rook to d6, attacking the pawn on h6 and the bishop on c6. Suppose black tries to defend the bishop by playing bishop to b7 say, then it's a checkmate on h6. Why? Because there is an active bishop pair on white side. Okay, so the g8 square is defended by this bishop, white colored bishop. The pawn is pinned by this bishop, so the pawn on g7 cannot capture the rook and the king is being checkmated by the rook. Okay, so it is not possible for black to save its bishop. So the only move is king to h7, going for saving the checkmate and defending the h6 pawn, and white can now take the bishop. Rook takes c6. Let us look at the next puzzle. Okay, it is a game played in 1886 in London, played between Lipschutz as white and Scallop as black. It is white to move. White is here ahead in material. White is up by one pawn and white has one very active and aggressive bishop for one black knight. Well, there is nothing much for black to do. Here it is only one move for white to just finish the game. So you can just pause the video right now and try to find the best move for white here. The move is queen to c4, forking the rook on c8 and threatening for a checkmate on g8, right? So it's a fork. The queen is forking a piece and a square which is dangerous for his opponent, right? So here black can do nothing actually after if say rook takes queen, then rook takes knight checkmate. Else if rook takes rook or queen takes rook, queen to g8 checkmate. Even if queen takes rook, queen to g8 checkmate. So there is nothing for black to do here in this position. Let us look at the next puzzle. Here the material is equal for black and white. It is white to move and there is a combination for white so that he can be in an advantage. So you can just pause the video right now and try to find the best move for white here. Well, the combination, which means that there is a sacrifice coming up. So the combination is, it starts with rook to c6 check. Okay. So pawn takes rook, pawn to d7, pawn to b7 with a check, forking the king and the rook. There is nothing for black to do. It has to go to b8, otherwise the pawn can be promoted anyway. So pawn takes rook, promoting to a queen with a check, and king to a8. So at the end of the day, white is ahead by one bishop. White is up by one bishop for one black pawn. So white is in a +2 advantage right now. Let us look at the next puzzle. Well, it is a game played in 1957 in Budapest, played between Kikovic as white and Forintos as black. So it is white to move. White is here ahead in material. If you just count the materials, white has 2 rooks for one black rook, so that's a +5 advantage. White is up by 2 pawns, so this is a +7 advantage, but black here is up by 2 minor pieces. So that is a overall there was +7 -6, so that's a +1 advantage. So it is white to move, and white has a very beautiful sequence here to just finish off black. So you can just pause the video right now and try to think of the best move for white here. The position is little bit frustrating, so you may need some extra time for that. Don't lose patience. You can just think properly and you will succeed. Well, rook takes knight and king takes knight. There is no follow-up. Okay. And also white is losing in material. So obviously rook takes e8 is not the right move we are talking about. The move is rook takes the bishop on c8. Now there are 2 options for black, taking the rook with the king or taking the rook with the rook on a8. Let us consider this example. Rook takes rook, then d7, forking the knight and the rook. So king takes d7, bishop to g4 check. So this is called a skewer. However, king to d8, bishop takes the rook, king takes rook, rook takes knight, forking the king and the knight on the other side. So king to d7 maybe, and then white picking up the last hope for black. So obviously that is not a desired position for black here. So let us look at the other option that we have considered after rook takes c8. what happens? So capturing the rook with the black rook is not a good idea. So what happens when king takes rook? King takes c8, coming up with the obvious queen takes e8, forking the knight and the king, at the same time skewering the other rook, right? So king has to move, king to d7, and rook picks up the black rook. Now let us look at the last puzzle of the day. Believe me, it's gonna be very tough. We have flipped the board, we have rotated it because it's a move from black, the only puzzle in this video that we are gonna talk about from black's perspective. I mean, black is gonna win something. So white is here up in material. White is up by 2 pawn, right? But it is black to move, and black can seriously turn the table. It may take so much time to think, but again, I would suggest don't lose hope, don't lose patience. Try to think of all the possible moves, but it's gonna be very tough. So you can just pause the video right now and try to think of the best move for black. Well, the idea is rook takes rook, queen takes rook is doing nothing. So obviously we are not going to do that. The sequence starts with rook takes h2 with a check. Okay, so right now the rook is forking the king and the queen. But if you have thought that queen takes the king and then we can just take the queen, that is doing nothing because we have taken a pawn, that is a +1, -5, +5, +9, sorry, -5, that is +10 -10, which is a 0. We are gaining nothing. So that is not actually the case if you have thought of. So rook takes h2 with a check, that is very much good. The only move is queen takes h2. But if you have thought of again capturing the queen with our rook on h7, then that is not the case. If you have thought of that, then I'm again giving you some time. You can just pause the video right now and try to think of other great moves for black here. Well, if you have found f2, that is the right move here. I mean, after f2 there is nothing for white to do except rook to f1. Any other move from white will help black in promoting the pawn to queen. So the only move is rook to f1. Queen takes e4 with a check. Rook to f3 immediately loses for white. Queen takes f3, checkmate. So that is not the option. So rook to g2, the only option. Rook takes h2, check. King takes h2, the only move. Rook to h7, check. King cannot go back to this or this. This is protected, so king, the only option for king is to go to the g3 square. And then queen to d3 check, forking the king and the bishop. King takes f2 and then queen takes the bishop with a check, and it's completely lost for white here. I mean, black is only up by 1 point because black is up by 1 queen and 1 bishop for 2 white rooks and 1 white pawn. But again, I mean, it's completely lost after this. King to g1 maybe, after d4 check. I mean, there is nothing much, maybe this, and then this pawn is very much powerful. Black will start pushing this pawn forward, and this is completely lost for white here. So this is all for this video. I hope you have liked it. If you did, then please give it a like, share it with your friends and relatives. In case you have any question or suggestion, you can write it down on the comment section. I'll be looking forward to it. See you next time.